Welcome to a deep dive into a moment frozen in time, August 2001.
That's right, a fascinating glimpse into the agency's counterterrorism efforts right before the world changed.
Okay, so we're basically time travelers here, going back to understand what was happening inside the intelligence community during those critical pre-9/11 days. What exactly can we learn from these documents?
We'll unearth the CTC's perceived strengths and weaknesses, explore the operational hurdles and triumphs they faced, and most importantly, try to understand the context of their work during this pivotal period.
Sounds like a lot to unpack. Let's start with the basics. What was the DCI Counterterror Center?
Established in 1986, the CTC was the central hub for all things related to U.S. counterterrorism efforts. Imagine a high-pressure melting pot where analysts, field operatives, and specialists from across the intelligence community converged.
You mentioned stressful work environment several times in the documents. I can only imagine. This wasn't your average desk job, was it?
Not at all. The report highlights that CTC employees were constantly under immense pressure, operating in a perpetual state of crisis. They were grappling with a multitude of threats, often bombarded with information, and constantly pressured to deliver immediate results.
A pressure cooker is a good analogy.
Yeah.
And the report even acknowledges that this environment could lead to missed opportunities. Knowing what we know now, those words send chills down my spine.
Absolutely. This finding underscores the incredibly difficult balance between tackling immediate crises and cultivating a long-term strategic approach to counterterrorism. The report also highlights a stop-and-go funding issue that likely exacerbated this tension.
Like trying to build a house on a foundation that keeps getting pulled out from under you. It's no wonder the report mentions employee burnout and chronic understaffing in employee feedback.
Yes, this was also a period after significant budget cuts in the 1990s, so the entire intelligence community was navigating those resource constraints.
So doing more with less. Despite these limitations, the report highlights some remarkable CTC successes, particularly their operations against Osama bin Laden. What's really intriguing is they were actively working to disrupt his network on a global scale.
Yes, the CTC played a key role in derailing planned attacks and apprehending operatives, all while meticulously tracking bin Laden's movements and building an understanding of al-Qaeda's structure.
The report mentions a UBL station several times. What was that exactly?
Think of it as a virtual command center completely dedicated to tracking bin Laden and al-Qaeda. The UBL station highlights the escalating concerns surrounding this specific threat.
A whole team dedicated a one-man talk about high stakes. The report mentions field officers praising their support as excellent, timely, forward-leaning, and substantive. They were definitely making an impact.
They were. It seems the UBL station was providing crucial, actionable intelligence to those on the front lines.
So the CTC wasn't just reacting to every crisis that emerged. They were taking proactive steps to disrupt and even preempt attacks.
Precisely. They were making a concerted effort to get ahead of the target, as the report phrases it.
Yeah, let's dive into the CTC's relationship with other agencies, particularly the FBI. The report suggests this dynamic was complex.
It was. While it describes the relationship between the FBI and the CTC as vastly improved by 2001, it acknowledges that some tension remained.
A bit of sibling rivalry, perhaps.
You could say that. It stemmed from their distinct missions and cultures. The CTC tackled the broader spectrum of international terrorism, while the FBI primarily focused on domestic threats.
And this difference in scope is where those concerns about deference to law enforcement goals comes in.
Exactly. This is where things get interesting. The report suggests that opportunities for intelligence gathering might have been missed because of the need to prioritize building legally sound cases for prosecution.
So sometimes the immediate need to build a legal case might have superseded the goal of disrupting a potential attack, even if it wasn't related to al-Qaeda.
That's one way to look at it. Remember, the CTC was responsible for monitoring a much broader range of potential threats.
Which must have made prioritization a constant juggling act.
Absolutely. And on top of that, they had to carefully balance their liaison work with foreign intelligence services and their own unilateral operations. It was a complex web of relationships and responsibilities.
This leads us to another significant theme in the report: strategic analysis. It seems there was a desire for the CTC to dedicate more resources to this type of work.
Yes, many interviewees voiced concerns that the relentless focus on immediate crisis response was hindering their ability to develop long-term predictive analysis. Analysts felt pressured to prioritize immediate needs over in-depth research.
It sounds like they were so busy putting out fires, they didn't have time to figure out how to prevent them. But the agency knew al-Qaeda was a serious threat.
They were aware, yes, but the report suggests that a deeper dive into strategic analysis could have potentially uncovered more actionable intel, and those insights might have been crucial in getting ahead of the target. It's impossible to rewrite history, but it's a point worth examining.
Definitely makes you think about the road not taken. And speaking of navigating complex paths, the report also reveals some intriguing internal dynamics within the CTC. There's this recurring theme of frustration with the lack of clear direction from leadership.
That's not uncommon in organizations grappling with multifaceted challenges under immense pressure.
Right. The report cites conflicting signals and a lack of analysts' time as contributing factors. It seems that even with this constant influx of information, there wasn't always a shared understanding of how to act on it effectively.
That speaks to the difficulty of establishing clear priorities in a rapidly evolving landscape. What's particularly fascinating is the report's mention of the DCI and Deputy Director for Intelligence requesting more analytic think pieces from the CTC.
While simultaneously, analysts on the ground were feeling overwhelmed by the immediate demands of crisis response. That seems like a significant disconnect.
It does. It highlights that classic tug-of-war between delving into big-picture analysis and addressing the urgent task at hand.
A constant balancing act, especially with limited resources and the clock ticking. But it wasn't all internal struggles. The report does mention that the CTC received generally positive feedback from its customers, so to speak. The White House, Congress, the military, they valued that rapid dissemination of information and saw the CTC as the go-to source on terrorism.
Yes, this reinforces their ability to deliver timely and actionable intelligence.
But there were criticisms too, right? It seems those mainly revolved around the need for smoother coordination.
Exactly. Feedback from both field stations, known as DO stations, and area divisions, which are regional branches within the Directorate of Operations, highlighted the desire for closer collaboration, particularly on strategy and operations.
And the report suggests that CTC management should have cultivated a more active dialogue with these divisions.
Yes, improved communication and coordination were definitely identified as areas for improvement.
There's a whole section on surge and information exploitation management that really drives home the sense of urgency that permeated the CTC. Sounds intense.
It does. The inspectors highlight the constant challenge of managing sudden surges in activity, often triggered by a terrorist incident or a credible threat.
So imagine a wave of information and pressure crashing down, requiring immediate action and analysis.
Exactly. And while the report acknowledges that CTC employees were generally adept at adapting to these surges, relying on teamwork and initiative, it also took a toll. Remember those concerns about employee burnout and understaffing?
Right, that constant pressure cooker environment.
It seems that while CTC management recognized the issue and encouraged employees to take time off, there were only so many options in such a resource-constrained environment.
A sobering reminder of the human cost of working on the front lines of intelligence. And the report also notes that these intense demands often prevented the CTC from fully capitalizing on the intelligence they did manage to gather.
Again, that tension between the sheer volume of information and the need to sift through it, analyze it, and act on it effectively.
A classic case of information overload, even with advanced tools and technology at their disposal.
It appears the human element remained crucial in navigating that flood of data.
The analysts and their expertise were essential in connecting the dots.
Precisely. The report emphasizes the need for more robust linguistic support to help analysts make sense of the massive amounts of foreign language data they were dealing with. It also delves into the importance of streamlining internal processes and enhancing the flow of information within the CTC.
It seems the inspectors identified several areas where they felt the center could operate more efficiently.
They did. And this is where their relationship with the DO stations becomes especially interesting. The report highlights the significance of the CTC's financial assistance to these field operations.
So the CTC's funding was often vital for enabling stations to carry out operations that their own divisions couldn't afford.
Yes, which speaks to the center's ability to act swiftly and decisively, bypassing some of the bureaucratic hurdles other parts of the agency might have faced.
It also underscores the collaborative nature of counterterrorism work, the need for different parts of the intelligence community to work together seamlessly.
Absolutely. However, the report also points out that despite this generally positive relationship, concerns about communication and coordination did arise, mirroring the feedback from those area divisions we discussed earlier.
So even with the CTC funding flowing to the field, there were still communication gaps.
It seems so. The report specifically suggests that CTC management should find opportunities to engage in a more active dialogue with DO area division management. Clearly, they felt there was room for improvement in how the CTC communicated its operational strategies and priorities.
And it wasn't just about strategy. The report also mentions that some field officers felt routine queries sometimes fell through the cracks. They attributed this to an overworked staff at the CTC, which makes sense given everything we've learned about their workload.
Absolutely. It speaks to the challenge of managing that volume of requests and ensuring nothing gets lost in the shuffle. Another logistical puzzle on top of everything else.
It seems like a constant balancing act, staying ahead of every urgent request while also finding time for those bigger picture strategic analyses.
It certainly was. And it highlights that even the most sophisticated, highly trained organizations are still ultimately comprised of human beings with human limitations.
We also see that stop-and-go funding problem resurfaced in the context of long-term planning.
Yes, the inspectors raised concerns about the reliance on supplemental funding. While necessary, this erratic flow of resources made it incredibly difficult to develop and sustain those crucial long-term programs.
Creating constant uncertainty and making it nearly impossible to plan ahead effectively.
They use the term roller coaster to describe that fiscal year, which must have created significant stress and anxiety for CTC management. And speaking of stress, let's revisit that finding about staffing. It's quite telling that a substantial proportion of CTC personnel felt their work unit was understaffed.
A strong statement. It speaks volumes about the pressure they were under and the feeling of constantly trying to do more with less.
And it circles back to those concerns about employee burnout. While the inspectors acknowledge that CTC management recognized this issue, they also underscore the limitations they faced in addressing it within such a resource-constrained environment.
This entire report paints a picture of an organization operating under immense pressure, trying to do so much with limited resources just weeks before a catastrophic event.
It offers a sobering perspective on the challenges of working in that kind of high-pressure environment where the stakes are unimaginable. It's easy to play armchair quarterback decades later, but this report provides us with invaluable firsthand accounts and insights into those crucial pre-9/11 days.
It truly does. This deep dive has been eye-opening to say the least. As we conclude, I keep coming back to that stressful work environment and those recurring concerns about understaffing. The what-ifs are impossible to ignore. What are your final thoughts?
The report doesn't offer easy answers, but it provides a window into the complex realities of counterterrorism work. It underscores that constant struggle to balance immediate threats with the need for long-term strategies and the human cost inherent in that work. This report challenges us to consider the what-ifs without losing sight of the dedication and resilience of those who navigated those uncertain times.